All right, everyone, welcome back into another NBA prop betting video. Going to be breaking down all the best bets here that we have for this pretty big slate on Friday. Let's go ahead and get into it. Now, guys, when I'm recording this video, it's a little bit too early for like minutes projections for the most part, okay? Games are taking place on Friday. I'm recording this video on Thursday morning, but we are able to get a pretty good head start on some of the games here. Now, the first game, I wouldn't say that's necessarily going to be the case. This is a pretty high scoring game at 238.5 total points and a close projected game with Cleveland projected to win by 5.5 points. The issue is I don't think we're necessarily getting that many great bets, especially because for Cleveland, we are still waiting on some news, mostly whether or not Jared Allen is going to play, because I do think that impacts really one of the bets here that I don't mind, which is kind of trying to target Jalen Johnson here in this spot. So we do know that for the Hawks, Trae Young is still out, and so I don't mind the idea of potentially getting to like Jalen Johnson to get over his points, rebounds, and assists here of 35.5. About a 50.5% chance for this hit, so not terrible. We look at his splits coming in off of a terrible game, but overall, this is a spot where he should be able to get the over, so I don't hate that. We do see 30 minutes in the last game, not a good game shooting, guys. 3 for 12, just bad there. Now, he has played Cleveland as well. In that game, he ended up getting 35 minutes, 23 points, 13 rebounds and 5 assists. So he was able to get the over there in that game. So that's really the spot that I think I end up liking the most here for this game. We do see Zachary Reichesher to get over his points here. I do feel like that's a little bit hit or miss. I don't know if I necessarily need to get to that bet there. And then looking at Cleveland, again, I don't think we're necessarily getting that many great bets just yet. It is worth calling out, guys. Darius Garland currently probable, DeAndre Hunter currently probable, and then we also have Jared Allen, who's questionable. We don't know if he's going to play, and then they could be getting healthier. They could be getting Craig Porter back, Dean Wade back, Max Strus is still up, and Sam Merrill is currently questionable as well. So we do have a lot of question marks here for the Cleveland Cavs, and that's really why we're only getting bets here for Donovan Mitchell. And so let's just take a peek at his lines that we are getting. The only over bets that we are seeing is going to be him to get over 28.8 points. Let's actually take a peek at what he did against Atlanta in the last game, guys. 37 points in that game, shot the basketball a bunch. So maybe if you want to do a little game stack, you could end up getting to Donovan Mitchell for his over points with Jalen Johnson for over his points, rebounds, and assists. Not terrible bets. Again, high scoring game, not a bad way to go about attacking that game. And so we go ahead and jump on into the Magic versus the Pistons, guys. So Orlando is still banged up. They're going to be without Banchero and Mo Wagner. I mean, nothing too crazy there. Detroit's pretty much healthy. An okay game here, guys. 5.5 point spread in favor of Detroit winning with a 232.5 game total. We are seeing the best bet that we have currently is going to be Jalen Duren to get over 11.5 rebounds with about a 52% chance to hit. Just based off of his averages, that does end up being a pretty good bet. And if we look at his last game against Orlando as well, was able to get to 13 rebounds in that game. So assuming that this game does end up staying close, I do think we like the idea of getting to Duren to get over his rebounds there in this game. So I think that ends up being a decent spot for us there. Then we also have Cade Cunningham, guys, who his lines seem to be a little bit too high, but I also think they are basically correct. This is a game where on a Friday where I assume a lot of people are going to be watching these games. I don't hate the idea of potentially getting to their overs because I think like star players tend to play a little bit better when they know more eyes are on them, which again, I think is going to happen more so on Friday. Don't get me wrong. It's not the Christmas slate or anything like that, but I do think it is appealing to target. We do look at the last game, guys, against Orlando, ended up with 30 points in that game, 10 assists, 6 rebounds. And so I do think that this is a bet that as time goes on, leading up to lineup lock and game lock, people are going to be chasing his overs. And so I want to get ahead of that. I don't mind his over points. I don't mind his over points, rebounds, and assists. I think these lines are currently a little bit too low. Again, it could end up being a little bit of a sweat if we look at his splits here, guys, but I like the fact that he is consistently getting this over. And so I do think that ends up being a pretty good bet. And I don't mind the idea of targeting Duren and Cade Cunningham together, just betting on the game to stay close and for it to not end up being a blowout. Now, Jalen Suggs is kind of an interesting player to bet on as well. He has been someone that has been playing better recently. Over 24.5 points, rebounds, and assists, has about a 51% chance to end up hitting. He is someone that we do need the minutes to be there. Okay, so in the last game, only around 20 minutes there. But that was simply because he ended up getting ejected in that game. Okay, so kind of, we write that off, and then we see 3 or 4 straight games of him getting that over. And so I kind of think that is partially the reason why we're getting his line so low. And I do think that's a bet that we want to be getting into as well, especially if we are looking to do a game stack. Now, earlier this year, he played Detroit, did not play that many minutes, guys. Only 21 minutes, had 8 points, only 5 assists, and only 2 rebounds. So obviously we do want him to get closer to those minutes that he's been getting lately, which is closer to 30 minutes. Okay, so that's really what we need him to get. But all in all, I do think that ends up being a decent spot for us. And then Franz Wagner as well. I don't hate his overs as well, but I think we're pushing it a little bit too far with that. If we're doing a game stack, I don't think we need to do like an onslaught game stack where we're attacking everyone. Now, don't be surprised if he ends up having a good game. I just feel like the lines that we're getting for him are basically correct. And then, guys, we go ahead and get into Washington versus Indiana, which I think is kind of an interesting game. Okay, so right now, guys, Washington could be missing Keyshawn George, Corey Kispert, and Marvin Bagley. Okay, so Kispert ended up leaving the game on Tuesday, which led to CJ McCollum getting a lot of minutes in that game. And so I think he ended up getting 37 minutes in that game. Basically the most that he's gone this year, except for 2 other games. So to me, already that's pretty interesting, okay? But look at his matchup with Indiana as well. Had a pretty good game in that game, guys. 9 rebounds and assists, ended up with 14 points. We need a little bit more out of him. 16 for 15 from the field. Not the best there. And 2 for 6 from 3-ball range. So we do need a little bit more from him if we are going to be running out any overs here. As we're going to see, we're not getting any sportsbook data on this line yet. I'm kind of surprised that PrizePicks is actually giving us this line because if Bagley sits, if George sits, and if Kispert sits, we're going to end up seeing that CJ McCollum is probably going to get closer to 30 plus minutes, especially in this very good matchup here against the Pacers. And so assuming that this game stays close, I think we could be getting a decent edge on this. Now, it is risky because we do need all those things to happen for all those players to end up sitting. But if they do, that ends up being a pretty good bet. Now, the player that's going to be the most likely to play, I would say, is Keyshawn George. And so if you want to bet on his overs, just hoping that he plays, I don't hate that idea. He has been someone that has been cooking lately. And in this matchup against the Pacers, I do not hate that. The only game in which he did not get the over, didn't get that many minutes in that game, 2 for 7, really just had himself a bad game. The issue with the Wizards as a whole is that we can never really love the minutes that we have them projected to get because the minutes are typically spread out. So that's always a little bit of a concern. We are seeing that Sarr to get over his rebounds, 8.5, is currently one of the better bets here. I don't hate that idea here as well, guys. Again, with him, it's basically the same thing. We do need him to be in a game where it's not going to be a blowout. And if it doesn't end up being a blowout, I do like the idea of betting on him to get over 8.5 rebounds. And with how it looks, I do think Bagley is going to end up sitting for his 4th straight game. For what's worth, guys, Corey Kispert just had a thumb injury. So I don't know if that's really going to impact his status for this game after having several days off. We'll see. But really could end up being some pretty good edges here in this game for Washington if some of those players do end up sitting. And again, if you want to attach George for his overs, I don't think that really changes too much. Either he plays and it's not a terrible bet, or he sits and who cares, that ends up being a DNP. Now, guys, for the Pacers, I don't really think we're getting that many crazy bets. I mean, right now we are basically only getting Siakam, but I feel like the lines that we're getting for Siakam are correct. And so I don't think we need to go in on them really too much. Maybe as the day progresses tomorrow on Friday, we'll be able to find some better bets, but let's go ahead and jump on into the next game. All right, guys, so jumping into Philly versus Brooklyn. This is a game that doesn't have the highest game total, 228.5, with the Sixers favored to win by 6.5 points. I find that to be interesting, the 6.5 points, because Philly is still pretty banged up, guys. So VJ Edgecombe currently questionable, Paul George currently questionable, Joel Embiid currently questionable. All 3 of those could end up sitting, and then that point spread, I think, would not be as good. We do see on average it's about 5.7, just as an FY, but the standard line is 6.5. That being said, guys, Adam Bona is still out. Kelly Oubre is out as well. So it is interesting because if VJ Edgecombe does end up playing, he's going to have a decent amount of usage if Paul George and Joel Embiid sit. So there's a lot of if-then statements here to the point where it's not really worth covering. I will say the lines that we are getting for Tyrese Maxey to me basically seem correct. It is worth calling out that in the last game where these two teams met, Maxey did end up having a pretty good game, guys. 26 points in that game, 7 rebounds, or 7 assists, 6 rebounds. So a pretty good game there. But I think the lines that we're getting for him are actually a little bit too juiced up. And so if you want to bet on his under of 43.5 points, rebounds, and assists, I don't hate that bet. And then this bet that we're getting for Noah Clowney is kind of interesting here for his over 18 points and rebounds here, has about a 51% chance for it to hit. And I think the biggest reason as to why we'd be interested in this is really due to his minutes being up recently. So heavy minutes over the last several of games. If he ends up still getting those minutes, which could end up happening, guys, they are still somewhat banged up, but it does seem like they are just truly trying to give him a look. And in this game that is projected to stay close, I think that could end up being a little bit of an edge there. So I don't hate that bet. In regards to some of the other bets that we were getting, I feel like the lines are basically correct. We do know that Michael Porter Jr. is going to end up shooting the basketball a bunch. It's just whether or not he's making the buckets. That's not necessarily a bet that I want to chase. So with that, guys, let's go ahead and jump on into the Bucks versus the Knicks. All right, so jumping into the Bucks versus the Knicks, definitely interesting, just given the fact that we are getting any lines here for the Bucks. Okay, so the biggest question mark is really whether or not Giannis is going to end up being active in this game. He ended up sitting in the last game in which the Bucks barely ended up losing to the Miami Heat. Really, as I would have expected, I told you guys kind of to be betting on that game. Kind of hoping that Giannis would play so that they would win, but I thought they would cover in that game against Miami. They end up doing that. I don't hate that approach here as well in this game, is maybe betting on the Bucks to cover, seeing differing lines, 4.5, 6.5. It really does depend on whether or not Giannis ends up playing. He is someone that always does seem to play well against the Knicks, though, so if you guys want to bet on his over PRA, I do not hate that idea here. If he ends up playing, it doesn't end up being a terrible bet. We do like it in the last game against New York, guys. Crushed them as well. 37 points in that game, 8 rebounds, 7 assists. And so it's one of those spots where I don't mind the idea of just betting on his over PRA. If he ends up playing, great. We should be able to get that over. If he ends up sitting, kind of, oh well. Then we could look at some of these other bets. And so one of the better bets that we were on for that Wednesday slate was Ryan Rollins for over his fantasy score. I felt like the lines that we were getting on him were strange, just given the fact that Giannis could end up sitting, and then his standard line that we're getting for his fantasy score was just wrong. Now, overall, guys, the bet of the day for PrizePicks was not the best there. Ended up going 2 for 6. That being said, the underdog bet of the day ended up going 3 for 3 for us. Yes, one of those was a free square for Curry, but I felt like we were getting some pretty good edges for the underdog slip. So 2 for 2 ended up being a profitable day. Hopefully, this ends up being a good day for this Friday slate here as well. But really, with Ryan Rollins, I don't feel like we need to go in on him that much. I do think it's more likely that Giannis does end up playing, although I don't hate the idea of betting on maybe Giannis to end up sitting in this game, and then we could still get to Rollins for over his PRA. That would kind of be the approach, guys, with the lines that we were getting for all the Bucks. Like, if we want to bet on Miles Turner for over his PRA of 22.5, and even we could get to like Kyle Kuzma or Bobby Portis for over their PRA. That being said, that does feel like we're pushing it too much. But I don't mind the idea of betting on Rollins and also Turner for over their PRA, trying to get an edge if Giannis does end up sitting. That being said, guys, we do have Kevin Porter Jr., who's currently questionable. He could end up finally playing for the first time since the opening game. That would probably shift some of the usage away from Rollins. So there is a little bit of risk there as well. But again, the whole point of doing a bet like this is to be early on some bets that would definitely get bumped up if Giannis were to end up sitting. Now, for the Knicks, I don't really love the bets that we were getting for them. This is a decent game total. I just think the lines that we're getting for the Knicks are currently correct, and so no real reason to go in on them right now. All right, so now we go ahead and get into Charlotte versus Chicago. This is actually a pretty appealing game to stack, I think. Very high game total, projected to be a close game with the Chicago Bulls expected to win. Now, the issue that I have is a lot of the bets that we're seeing here as good bets are being told to be under bets. Another issue that we have is a lot of the Chicago players are currently questionable, guys, including Nikola Vucevic, who, if Vucevic ends up sitting, I do think that it would ultimately actually help Ryan Kalkbrenner be able to get his overs here of like 7 points there. It's a bet that I wouldn't hate then. He has been a little bit streaky, so I don't necessarily trust that bet there for Ryan Kalkbrenner, but worth calling that out. Isaac Okoro is also someone that's currently questionable for the Bulls. He would probably end up starting if he's active. Kevin Huerter is also currently questionable, guys. He is someone that could end up really impacting this game for the Bulls. So for the most part, I don't think we want to mess with the Bulls prop bets just yet, although it is an appealing game again to stack. Very high game total, close game. I do think we want to be targeting overs. And so the first bet that we're seeing is potentially like LaMelo Ball to get his overs. I don't mind the idea of doing his over PRA of 31.5, although if we're doing that, we might as well chase these bets that have about a 51% likelihood for it to hit. Overall, I think any of them are going to end up being pretty solid bets. We do need the minutes to be a little bit higher for him, which hopefully in this game that's projected to be close and a higher scoring game, that would really end up being the bet for us. He hasn't played against Chicago thus far this year, but I think we're getting some game stacks here, so I don't mind that idea. Whether it be his over rebounds and assists, whether it be his over points and assists, I think we're just getting some okay spots here for him just in general. So it really comes down to probably game stacks. Now, Brandon Miller was someone that yesterday we were getting some pretty good bets on. We are probably seeing him take away some usage away from LaMelo Ball, although I don't think we have a big enough sample size to necessarily say that for sure. He is someone that in a game where it ends up staying close enough for long enough, I do like the idea of getting to him for over his points and assists, or his points and rebounds, or his points, rebounds, and assists. All of them to me are pretty decent spots. I think I'd probably just still go with his points and assists. So this is a better, more traditional sportsbook bet. So if you guys are someone that bets on, DraftKings, FanDuel, some of those sites, I end up liking that bet a little bit more there. Or on PrizePicks, where we're being told to bet on the under, I don't necessarily need to get to that one as much. And then Con Canopal, he is someone that we're not getting any bets for just yet, but he is someone that I'm probably staying away from just because of Brandon Miller being back, kind of taking away some of his usage. Josh Giddey is not a player that I need to get to as well, although I would like to. Again, this is an appealing game to game stack. I think we're probably going to be looking at some fantasy score prop bets. If you guys are someone that plays on PrizePicks or Underdog, I think that'll probably end up being the way to approach this game. Now, guys, unfortunately, we aren't getting any bets here for this Denver versus Spurs game. I do think this can end up being a pretty good spot for us, so I do just want to call it out. Like, Wemby is most likely, or he's out here for the Spurs, and Castle is also out, so I think we're probably looking at Fox to end up having a good game once again. The issue with this game is it is projected to be a bit of a blowout, 10.5-point spread in favor of Denver winning. On top of that, guys, Julian Strawther, Christian Braun, and Aaron Gordon are all out, which should lead to more production for Peyton Watson overall. He is someone I don't mind getting to, but it really just depends on the line, so I don't want to speculate too much. So another game that I probably don't want to attack all too much is going to be this OKC versus Suns game. Okay, this is a game where it's a 14.5-point spread. We do know that the Suns are kind of banged up. Grayson Allen, questionable. Ryan Dunn, questionable. Jalen Green is still out here. And so it does really impact some of the bets that we can get to for the Suns. We are seeing Devin Booker for over 6.5 assists is currently a plus EV bet. I'm a little bit wary about this bet just because it is a game in which it is a 14.5-point spread. That being said, I mean, to get any plus EV bet currently as I'm recording this video, we should be taking that. So if you guys are watching this video and that bet is still there, we should just be using that bet. Now from there, we are getting Mark Williams for over 11.5 points. Really not a terrible bet. I don't love the matchup here, but he is someone that is getting enough minutes, even in blowouts. So I don't hate that bet. It does feel like we're forcing it slightly, but overall, you could end up getting to that one. Devin Booker for over his rebounds and assists, not a terrible bet there as well. Now, the player that I'd probably like the most, and it sounds ugly, would be like Dylan Brooks to get over his points. Not necessarily a lock and load bet by any means, guys. He's coming in off of a poor night shooting. I don't mind the idea of targeting players coming in off of a poor night shooting. He is someone that, if the game does end up staying close, him getting to over 17.5 points would be part of the reason as to why. So it's not a terrible way of like just doing a little bit of a game stack where you're gaining an edge just by simply saying that the game is going to stay close. So not necessarily a bet I think we need to get to, but worth calling out that logic. And then from there, I don't really love them. Isaiah Hartenstein to get over under 11.5 points. That one has a 53% chance to hit. I don't love it. So let's move on into the next game. So guys, as it currently sits right now, one of the most appealing games to stack is going to be the Kings versus Utah game. It's a 240.5 over and under with a 1.5-point spread in favor of Utah winning. For the Kings, we are wondering whether or not Dennis Schroeder is going to end up playing. We thought we were getting some pretty massive edges with him sitting, and we did. It just didn't come through. It was kind of one of those days for the Wednesday slate. Russell Westbrook was not able to really get going, kind of had himself a game in which he started off slow, kind of got it going. The whole team kind of had a weird game where they're getting blown out. We're able to mount a comeback with a lot of the backups, like Keegan Murray end up having a very good game. To me, that kind of just thinks that maybe the production that we're looking at could end up being a little bit random. That being said, I still don't mind the idea of getting to Westbrook for his over points, rebounds, and assists. With Sabonis off the court, he should be able to do that. Like his per 36 production with Sabonis off the court is 19.5 points, 9.5 rebounds, and 8.1 assists. Really all solid stuff there. All of them are plus numbers in comparison to when Sabonis is off the court. So plus 2.8 points on average, 1.5 rebounds. So obviously we like that there from him. Now, Dennis Schroeder is actually the player that benefits the most points-wise with Sabonis off the court. And so I don't mind the idea of potentially targeting his over points of 10.5 here. This would end up being pretty darn low. He averages 18.9 points per 36. The issue with Schroeder is, like, I think the most we can expect him to get is probably closer to 30, assuming that everyone's healthy in this game. He does average about 7 more points per 36 with Sabonis off the court, guys. So obviously that's crazy. And we got to look at DeMar DeRozan, who is coming in off of a poor game. Okay, we don't love that. But I'm a little bit surprised at his points and assist line here. I think we could get to this over. Again, he is coming in off of a poor game, but his per 36 production with Sabonis off the court is pretty good, guys. It is 24.7 points and 4.2 assists. So really not terrible if you guys just want to do his over points. Maybe try to gain an edge on like DraftKings or FanDuel instead of betting on PrizePicks, because we're not going to bet this bet on PrizePicks. 51.4% chance for that tip. We're not going to do it there with the under being the favorite there. So a better traditional sportsbook bet, we're going to get rewarded for doing the opposite end of the favorable bet. And then, just worth calling out, guys, Keegan Murray did end up having a very good game in that last game and has had 3 straight games that were pretty darn productive for him. What we like is that the minutes have been there for him. And so if he still ends up getting these heavy minutes, that is something I think we want to be looking into. Now, we don't have that many games where he's played with Sabonis off the court. It's not a great sample, but he does average 17.9 points and 7.2 rebounds with him off the court. And so I'm fine kind of chasing maybe this recent production that he's had, and I don't see them limiting his minutes in this game. So really, I don't mind the idea of attacking some of his overs here. Really, all of them are appealing. I think we would just end up going, though, with his over points and rebounds here, because obviously if we combine these two together, it should be at 24. So we're getting a little bit of an edge there. And then on the flip side of this, guys, Utah. I don't want to get to like Drew Eubanks for over his 6.5 points, even though the data is telling us this could end up being a decent bet. We just don't know the minutes that he's projected to get. So overall, I'm just going to stay away from that one for him. Isaiah Collier is someone, if this game stays close, I don't mind the idea of betting on his overs. I'm not going to lie, I don't like the recent game log with him. We need his mids to be higher as well. Ace Bailey has been someone that's been getting a little bit more run recently, or at least more consistent run recently. So if you want to bet on his over, chase this high game total and this close game, that's not a terrible way to attack this game. That is kind of the issue with Utah, is the minutes have been a little bit spread out in regards to who we would want to be betting on. Like the only player that we'd like feel confident on with his role would be Keontae George. And if this game stays close, I think we can project him to actually get more than 36 minutes. And so I do like the idea of attacking his overs. We can end up just going with his assist of 6.5. I don't hate that. I think that ends up being a pretty good bet in this. Again, if it's going to be a high scoring game, he's going to be involved. He's going to be part of the reason as to why it's a high scoring game. I like his over points, rebounds, and assists the most here, but given the fact that the data has given us a 51% chance for his over of 6.5 assists to hit, and he's gotten the over in 4 straight games. One game he missed it, only 6 in that game. Kind of, oh well. I don't know. I'm indifferent. I like the over points, rebounds, and assists. You guys let me know which one you guys like better there for George if we are chasing his over. And then, guys, we are going to jump into Dallas versus the Lakers, because we're not getting any bets for Memphis versus the Clippers just yet, which I'm surprised by. There's not that much news that we're waiting on. But we'll jump into the Lakers versus Dallas. So the news that we're waiting on here in this game really is Anthony Davis. Will he be active? He is currently questionable. That does really impact the full game here. Like, I don't actually mind the ideas of betting on Anthony Davis for his over 19.5 points. Like, if he ends up playing in this game, guys, he should end up getting at least 30 minutes. You would think he'd be kind of motivated to play well against the Lakers as well. And so I think the bets that we're getting on him are pretty darn appealing. The bet that we'd be chasing is going to be his over 19.5 points, though. From there, if he does end up playing, that's obviously going to impact Cooper Flagg. Now, it could be a good thing or a bad thing. It could end up making the game stay close. It is a 10.5 point spread, so we don't necessarily love that. But if he is going to get us, a few more minutes here and we don't have to worry about a blowout, I wouldn't hate that. But overall, I don't think we want to be targeting him that much. Gafford is someone that if the game stays close enough for long enough, I wouldn't hate his overs as well, but it does feel like we're forcing it a little bit. And then PJ Washington as well. PJ Washington is someone that if Anthony Davis is going to sit, that does help out his usage and his role a bunch. Okay, the minutes should end up being pretty high for him, but the minutes will be higher if the game stays close. And so I'm indifferent. I do like his over 21.5 points and rebounds here. And I know we haven't seen Anthony Davis all too much, But when AD is on the court, guys, PJ Washington's points go down by 4.2. His rebounds go down by 2.2. So his per 36 production is 14.7 points and 7.2 rebounds. So again, it's kind of a bet on his minutes actually maybe being a little bit higher than what he would typically get. Okay. So we do see the insane impact that AD has on this slate. So if he ends up sitting, this bet's going to get bumped up more. If AD ends up playing, then we are kind of SOL with some of the bets that we're getting to. Najee Marshall over his points and rebounds, not a terrible bet, but also not a bet that I feel like we need to go out of our way to target. And my issue with the Lakers is I feel like all the lines that we're getting on them are correct. Hachi Murph over 14.5 points and rebounds. I love if Anthony Davis is out. And so this is kind of one of those spots where you can kind of do two bet slips here. One with Davis playing, one with Davis out. If Davis is out, Hachi Murph over points and rebounds. PJ Washington over his points and rebounds. Not a terrible way to go about betting on this slate. Hachi Murph, though, is also a little bit risky because DeAndre Ayton is currently questionable. If Ayton ends up playing, this is honestly a pretty terrible bet. And so we do have some tough spots here, but that's kind of the beauty of doing these videos earlier and these bets earlier. You can gain some pretty massive edges if the news goes our way. Now from there, I actually don't like a lot of the Lakers bets that we were getting. I feel like they're all correct, and especially with LeBron being back, I don't really need to get on these overs. Now LeBron is kind of taking a backseat role for the most part. So like Reeves is still being productive. Luka has still been very productive there as well. And then LeBron, yeah, he's just not as involved as you would typically think he would be, which I mean kind of makes sense. Luka and also Reeves have been balling out, but I don't like the idea of getting to a lot of the bets that we're getting to for the Lakers as a result of that. I feel like we're just kind of, I know we're always making like educated guesses, if you will, but it even is more like amplified, I think, here for the Lakers. Now, guys, obviously I gave you a lot of bets to consider for this pretty massive Friday slate. So it is tough to give you guys a bet of the day. Obviously, there's a lot of bets that I called out. If you guys like any of the bets that I called out or honestly hate any of them, let us know in the comment section below. One, if you like them, just tell us which one you like. If you don't like a bet, leave a nice comment explaining why you don't like it. But overall, I kind of view these currently as the top bets right now. That being said, we do know Giannis could end up sitting and AD could end up sitting. We are still waiting on that news. So I didn't necessarily love including them in the bet of the day just because they could end up sitting. And honestly, if Giannis ends up sitting, we are getting a pretty good bet there with Ryan Rollins and again with Miles Turner. That is somewhat of the approach today with some of that injury news. But that's going to do it for this video, guys. Make sure to leave a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel if you guys have not done so before. If you guys would like access to the NBA prize picks and underdog and just all sportsbook prop bets, head on over to 9to5sports.com, get access to that tool plus much more, all available at 9to5sports.com for a low monthly cost of $10 a month. Appreciate you guys being here. Good luck, and as always, let's keep cashing.